inspired. I'm inspired.
Hey there guys, how's it going? My name is Sumit Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy, and I'm a flow state coach, which means that I help you feel better and perform better. Today I'm answering the question by Josh Bailey, I believe. Yes, Josh Bailey, shout out to you, brother. You asked me a question. In life, is it best to stick to the textbook fundamentals that we know works, or is it best to be creative and outside of the box? Okay. First of all, let's define the box. What is the box? The box is human-made. It's society, essentially, right? So we create the box, so we got to understand that first and foremost. This question is super interesting, man, because it's a bit of a paradox, right? Because we need both, essentially, right? And I'm sure you have this idea as well, which is why you asked this question. See, it works like this. How do we find what the fundamentals are? Well, we've got to experiment, right? And that requires creativity. But once we have the fundamentals down and we know what's effective, then what? Well, then we got to get creative again, and we change the approach, and we do something different, and then we keep moving with the process. I mean, this is really how we change and adapt and grow as people, right? We have these fundamentals set, but then we evolve over time, and things change and values change, and so we need creativity to allow us to add interest. You know, creativity is originality plus task appropriateness, right? So let's say you have a science project, someone asks you to follow these criteria and be creative at the same time. You might follow the criteria but be really unoriginal. Or you might be really creative but you didn't match all the criteria, so you're not going to get a good grade. So it's dependent on the context. For instance, I'll give you another example. Let's say that you go to a dentist, okay? Now, do you want your dentist to be super creative? I hope not. Okay? You want it to be like, oh, let me try this new teeth procedure. I've been looking it up online for the past week, and you know, it's really going to be exciting for me. No, you don't want to be that guinea pig, man. You want to know what works, right? You want to know what's effective in that moment. So, of course, you want the fundamentals in that case, in that particular circumstance. However, let's say he's doing a cleansing process on your teeth and he accidentally chips your tooth. Now he's got to be creative. Right? So it's really dependent on what the moment requires. Okay? So in life, you've got to switch between the two. One is like, you got to go back to the fundamentals. Other is like, okay, it's basically like, you've basically described the human experience in that question. You get what I'm saying, man? So you got to switch from moment to moment. You got to know when to be yang, when to be yin in the right moments. Right? Let's say you go to a workplace, and then that's a place to be yang. When you come back home and you relax, that's a place to be yin. Maybe you want to be more creative at home, so you don't get into a mundane routine of things, right? A cab driver, same thing. You don't want a cab driver to be super creative, but let's say you're running late for work, you might try out a new route. And that creativity will actually save you time. Maybe, maybe not. That's a risk. And you got to know when to take a stupid risk or when to take a brave risk, okay? Because stupid risks, they're not really helpful. Brave risks, they can be, right? High risk, high reward at times. And creativity is a risk. Artists take emotional risks, athletes take physical risks, you know, mentalists or people who work in the mind take mental risks. So creativity is about taking risks, and you gotta understand that. And risk is a flow trigger. Okay? So it's gonna put you into the zone, and it is important to do that. Now, you wanna be a successful risk taker. Not just a risk taker blindly. What's the point of taking a risk if you're not going to get the reward? It happens through pattern recognition. It happens through an understanding that novelty will also put us into the flow state. Right? So it's almost like learning the rules, and then you can break the rules. Okay? So learning the rules of life, like learning a musical instrument, let's say. Right? You know how to play the instrument now, but now you can improvise because you know the rules. So, yes, the fundamentals are important. In my personal perspective, having a fundamental of mind, body, spirit. This is what I offer in the Flow Zone Academy as well. I give people the fundamentals, or the foundation, the base. Right? What is alchemy? You start with a basic element to a noble element. Basic, right? It starts from the base, starts from the core. Anything that you see, everybody wants to build the cathedral. This is what my business coach says. Everybody wants to build the cathedral. Nobody wants to start from the foundation, from the base. You got to start from the base in order to build a building, right? Now, how to decorate that building, that's creativity. That comes later. However, how did you get that plan for that building made? That was also creativity. Right, the architecture and the planning and all that. That was creativity, right? So we need an interplay of both. This is a dynamic. It's not static, it's a dynamic that's happening. It's a process. The creative process helps us to get to some of the fundamentals, and the fundamentals help us to get more into our creative process, which is how evolution, growth, change happens. Okay? So you need a combination of both, my friend. You can ask yourself, what are my fundamentals, and when can I be creative? These are the questions you gotta be asking yourself, because it's very context dependent, and you want to get really good at being able to know when to step into creativity and know when to step into what works and the fundamentals. Let's say you're meeting somebody, you're being social. You have the fundamentals of social interaction, game, whatever you want to call it, right? The social arts. You have some of the basic understandings of it. Okay? Body language, tonality, like say some jokes, whatever you have in your list of fundamentals in your own mind. Okay? Now, let's say that you're doing all the fundamentals, but you're not getting those results. Now it's time to turn on the creativity. If we know what is effective, but it's still not being effective, now we need to turn on the creativity part of our brain to problem solve, to find a solution to this thing. I like the tried and tested methods. This is primarily what, in my book, I give evidence-based stuff. Because we know that it works, because we know that it's true. We're not going to be wasting time just, running around trying to find what works and what's the answer, right? We have some studies, people have, seen that this works before, and so let's see and depend on this, right? Like, for instance, we know so many studies say that gratitude is so helpful as a practice to us, right? We now have studies that show that meditation is beneficial to us, and more studies are coming out. Not doing it, not showing gratitude, not meditating is ineffective, and it could be regarded as a fundamental, for human living. But, what about some people who have great lives and they don't meditate, or someone who doesn't, it's just like we can find all these other loopholes, but I think it's very important for people to decide it personal to them. Everybody has their personal fundamentals, right? Of course, their core fundamentals like, as I mentioned, mind, body, spirit. But then we have the creative fundamentals too. We've got to understand that creativity by itself also has certain fundamentals. So what are the fundamentals of creativity? Well, like I said, originality with task appropriateness. Understand there's different levels of creativity. Understand there's a time and place for it. It comes from a cost. Like there's a cost to it. There's a risk involved. So once you have all of these together and you understand that, now it's time to get true to what is foundational to you, what matters to you, and what you can control. That's what to focus on. that becomes your fundamental, that becomes your foundation, that becomes your core. And as you can keep focusing on that, you create more efficiency, and through that, you allow creativity to kick in. And creativity has a feedback loop as well. It creates more flow creates more creativity. I myself, I've been hyper creative from a young age, so I'm very biased towards your question. I love creativity. I think that it can change the world, it can impact others, and it's very powerful, and not a lot of people have still tapped into what creativity really is and what it can do, okay? So I think we're still starting to understand it. And we've seen how much trailblazers or original people change the world. We do see that as well. By looking at these originals, we see that success follows certain clues. So, talking more about this topic, man, I'm going to get into a paradox myself, because it's such a interrelated, interconnected, interdisciplinary, interdependent thing. We need both sides of our brain to be working. We need our creative side and our efficient side. You know, sometimes it changes via gender as well. Males have more of that efficient side. Women tend to have much more of the creative side. But then again, it's like we need both, right? We need both, especially in an emerging world. We need both, and we've got to apply the different tools that we have in the way and order, in the right order, right? So let's say you have all the ingredients to a cake, but then you don't do it in the right order. It's going to mess up, and then you're going to leave the kitchen frustrated, right? It's like you put some sugar in a pie and you put it into the oven. No, that comes later. Don't put the sugar into the oven. What are you doing, right? It's like that. So I hope this topic gives you some new perspective, brother. Thank you for asking the question. I appreciate you. Thank you for subscribing. Have an amazing day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. Hope this helped you guys too. Boom.